Today I thought I'd do a quick video on this clunker, my 68 911. I've just given the engine a freshen up. When I say just, it's been probably 6 months ago, but I've been driving it. It's at its first oil change. It's running really well. So basically what it is, I've split the cases, and crank was standard, in really good nick. Put some 81mm J pistons from EBS Racing in Nevada. They're a bespoke piston that John gets made. High compression, obviously, because this is a 90102 engine, which is the 67S engine, aluminium. They only made about 1,800 of these, I'm led to believe. Very lucky to have this engine. Probably worth more than the bloody car. So I was very lucky to get it. Put some 1 thou under standard big ends in it. The mains are standard. Put some powdered rods in it. My reasoning for that was, by the time I pay to get my rods resized, the gudgeons done, buy the ARP bolts, get them balanced, the machine shop fuck them up, wait 12 months, they lose a rod, all that sort of stuff. It's cheaper just to buy the good stuff off the shelf. They're a lot lighter. Them and the pistons, the weight savings, that's why I've put 1 thou under bearings. I've tightened up the rod bearings a little bit. They're still not tight, but I'm just not going to get the rod to flog out and tighten up on that crankshaft. Not that I beat on it anyway, but that was my theory with that. A brand new set of valves, once again from John at EBS. They weren't cheap. It's obviously S, so it runs a bit different. Valves, they're not as sort of common as the earlier standard ones. They're a bit bigger, but they weren't expensive either, I suppose. Complete set of chain wheels, all brand new. A new set of Endless Racing IVIS chains. I upgraded the tensioner in the cases. Got that off Henry. You can buy some aftermarket stuff. I went for an original unit that Henry refurbishes. Once again, a wonderful bloke, full of knowledge. And put a new oil cooler on it, which is that jogby down there, and the other thing that you must do, it's in behind here, but the oil tanks. So a new oil cooler, they're not cheap, but it's the cheapest thing you'll do in an engine recondition or a freshen up. You've got to boil that tank or clean it, ultrasonic it. Mine was done for 3 days. The shit that comes out of that and the shit that is in that filter from past, cam chain failures with these engines, it's just going to ruin your motor when you freshen it up. So always put an oil cooler on it. A couple of grand, well spent. Another thing I want to talk about is rocker shaft seals. This has got a bit later model cam towers in it, which I think all the early engines have had done. I think these are off a 69 or a 70. Gives you the 11 stud lower valve covers so they don't leak. And while we're on that, this has got URO valve covers on it. As you can see, they were given to me by URO to do a bit of a review on. Perfect. Cheap, well made, Chinese stuff, I'm sure. But look, it's just a valve cover. If it's no good, you take it off and throw it in the bin and buy something else. But yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Anyway, the rocker shafts. If you want, I'll do another video on how I fit them. I modify the cam tower a bit, and there's a special way you fit them. You can read through the internet. There's a few different ways. I've sort of worked out the way that I do them, and they are perfect. I think that's one of your biggest oil leaks from these early 911s or any air-cooled 911 is these rocker shafts. People put the seals in, they cut them, they don't put them in properly, they walk, they come out, they leak. The other thing I found is there's at least two different suppliers of seals. One is rubbish. It's like plastic. The other one is a really good quality one. If you have them side by side, like I said, I can do a video on them if you're interested in it. You can see the difference. Believe it or not, the shit ones, what I got out of Germany, the really good stuff is from James at Auto House in Sydney. If you want good parts, good parts that they use in their workshop that they guarantee, Auto House in Sydney, just ring up James. The best service, really good parts. Exceptional quality parts, and at a pretty good price too. Because believe it or not, you can buy a lot of rubbish parts for these things. We talked about the cam box and the UROs. This car doesn't have S cams. I've put DC-30 cams in them from John Doherty in California. I've spoken to him. Wonderful man. So if you want a set of camshafts, get an E set, get them ground. Once again, use genuine Porsche stuff. He grinds them. Don't buy aftermarket cams. Get your Porsche cams ground by John, without a doubt, the far better quality cam. And it goes without saying, your rocker arms and all that. I'm not going to tell you how to suck eggs, but you know how to rebuild a motor. But that's what's been done on this to freshen it up. Running really well. A bit more of experience with an old air-cooled engine. It's all in these carbies. Go online, read all of Paul Abbott's blogs or his on how to clean these carbies, set them up, and buy a couple of sets of needle seats, because trust me, you'll get faulty ones, and a couple of sets of bloody floats, because I've gone through them. You need the PMO level. You have to set the float levels while they're running. You set them up mechanically, they are wrong, trust me. And the other thing which I do, which there's a bit of discrepancy, I zero these air bleeds, setting the vacuum at idle, I adjust the throttle blades. There is adjustments on the shafts. Get them as good as you can before you fiddle with these. I think that makes a huge difference as well. I run the mandatory one filter for each carburetor, one filter for the fuel pump. The other thing you have to run is a fuel pressure regulator. Gone are the days where you can buy the original pumps. They say it's a low volume pump, but it's bloody not. And the other thing is you want to fit a return line from your carburetors to the fuel tank, which I've done here. And then in here, I've got it written in my book, you drill a hole in a bolt or like a little sleeve. That's why it's clamped in there. And so when the car's turned off, this pressure will drop back to zero within probably 15 or 20 seconds. No pressure on these needle seats. You turn the car off when it's hot. You don't get boiling and all that sort of crap. You get an easy start. This works perfectly. Then you can adjust your fuel pressure regulator to run 3.5 psi in conjunction with what you've done there. The other thing is these come with magnesium manifolds. Just chuck them in the bin. They're just rubbish. They're 50 years old. They've had it. Get Richard at PMO. Get you a nice set of manifolds with the phenolic spacers so the heat doesn't come up. That is an absolute must. And while we're at it with, if you go on Paul Abbott's website, which I think he's out of business now, he'll tell you how to blueprint up all these arms, how to set it all up. I can't say enough. It's the carburetors on these cars that you need to spend time to get them right. The other thing is too, if all these weep, I use a Loctite sealer, it's the same as I use on aircraft fuel lines. It's like a paste, I forget what number it is, but just around the base of the thread where the copper washer goes, I just put a little bit and nip them up, and you'll get rid of all your fuel leaks or your weeping within 90%. Like those carbies are pretty good. I've had them vapor blasted a few years ago. All my wiring loom, I've got quick connectors. These are off a Holden Commodore thermo fans. So they're done here, they're done at the back here where the triangle of death is, and down at the starter motor. My starter motor relay's down there. It's some big hoo-ha about these starter motors. Just like every car, just put a relay in the starter motor so the solenoid gets a good 12 volt feed. I've done that because I'm a big believer with these cars. You service them, you change the oil and filter, do whatever you need to do. When it comes to time doing the valve clearances, it's engine out. You can do a proper job. Once your oil's been drained, unplug this. If you can't have this motor out in an hour, you're doing something wrong. I've got it set up on a beautiful, nice bench. Goes up on my hoist, sits down on the bench. My bench is on wheels. I then can work on the engine. You can do everything properly, have a proper good look at your engine, and then put it back in. It's a very enjoyable thing to do, and you don't do it that often. But you know, fucking around in here and underneath doing valve clearances, I just don't understand it. I'd rather spend 3 hours or 4 hours putting it in and out and having a really nice job right in front of me. Petronex ignition, that's my tachometer compensator for the MSD, and it's got MSD. It's all pretty standard on early model Porsches for plug fouling. So that's all pretty standard. My mechanical starter. So I've got it set up. So I've got no power at all to the engine bay from the battery. That supplies power to my engine bay. Here I've got a fuel pump on and off, so I can regulate that. And then I've got my mechanical starter, so I can run the engine, drive fuel. I can cut the power. When I'm working on it, it makes it really, really simple. Underneath, just not that I've done it, but all the exhaust and manifolds rather, heat exchangers, muffler. I've all had done in whatever that bloody stuff's called, where they bake it on in black. That's come up really well. Go back to my notes. Done the tinware mod on it, which I think's pretty standard. Everyone does that. It aids in the cooling. And the other thing I was going to mention is special tools. You need the circlip tool if you're not going to run genuine Porsche circlips or Porsche pistons. You cannot fit the circlips in the pistons without the special tool. It's $80 or $90. You just got to man up and buy it. The nut on the cam chain, on the cams, just get your 3/4 drive socket off eBay, cut a big window in it, so you can modify that. There's plenty of things on the internet on how to do that, so you don't need to buy that. I don't think there's really any special tools apart from that circlip tool that you need. When I fit rings, these are 81mm. These virals have been bought out to. I'll buy an 81mm Wiseco sleeve, or if it's 80mm and it's standard, do an 81, an 80 or an 80.5. Don't dick around with a ring compressor. Get a sleeve and slide it down. If you can see, I'm lucky enough that this is an aluminium engine, as you can tell by looking at it. Very lucky to have that. I don't really know anything about magnesium motors. I wouldn't own a magnesium motor. If you can, you want aluminium. I'm a big believer in when the valves were done, I don't get any machining done on anything, because there's only X amount of machining that you can do on any of these engines. You can't keep facing cylinder heads every time you put a set of guides in it or freshen it up, because one day they'll end in the bin and you can't get to these cylinder heads. The tunnel in the case was perfect. There's no modification as far as oil galleries go, or upgrade the oil pump. None of that. You know, this engine's done 55 years and it'll do another 55 years. There's no need to modify it if you're just driving it as a weekend car. So it's all completely standard when it comes to that. Big believer in that. And like I say, the crank standard, once you start machining stuff, you're going down a slippery slope. I'd rather at 90% and have it last, another 55 years than machine everything and have it brand new. And yep, it would be run at 99%, but it won't last that long, because once you start fucking with it, and especially here in Australia, it's very hard to get a machine shop that will do a good job. They will tell you they know what they're doing and how to do it, but I'm sorry, I really just don't believe them. That's about all of my little video on how to do an early model Porsche engine. Just have a quick look at my bit of paper. Oh, one other thing is, I have this argument with people. You can't fit career attentioners to it. So there's no hydraulic line here. On an early model engine, they are different. This is different. So these tensioners on these engines failed all the time. And if you pull this engine apart, this chain cover will show you where it's had a failed tensioner, and the chain's been rattling through it and filling the engine with iron filings or aluminium filings. So yonks ago, I've upgraded them to the 930 cam chain tensioners. Sounds wanky. It's not. It's just a bit of a big mouth tensioner. They're rebuilt. I don't run safety collars in it. A, because I can't fit them, and B, I really don't think it's necessary on a well-maintained car. Like I say, this is just my opinion on these things. There's other experts out there that, not other experts, I'm not an expert. There's experts out there that will tell you how to do things differently, but don't be afraid to do these, to pull it apart and do it all on your own. It's not a big deal, and don't think that someone's going to do a better job than you. And this thing will never run perfect. It will always drip a bit of oil somewhere. It's a 55-year-old car, and it's not a brand new, Honda 4-cylinder fuel-injected car that just runs perfect. That's part of it, and